Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's April 2nd, 2021, and today what I thought I'd do is I try and respond with two different approaches to a recent comment by one of my long-term subscribers who's made good comments throughout the whole time. And that was in response to a video that I made in response to a previous video. So a couple of videos ago, I made a video about using UV treated silage tarps, and we use them for preventing, for protecting our garden beds and for prepping areas where we want to put more beds or garden or blueberry bushes in the future. So we use UV treated or UV resistant black silage tarps to accomplish this. And I made a whole video on that. So that was just a couple of videos ago. And in response to that video, I got a question about, geez, what would I recommend for helping to transfer a lot that was nice grasses on the lot and turn it into a productive asparagus beds in the future. And so I made a video about multiple different ways, using solarization, using occultation, and so on. And I talked a little bit about sheet mulching. I may have talked a little bit about weed mats as well. So that video basically was about, weed control. Then Earl Shine, one of my regular followers. All right, where are we here? Apologize. Earl responded to this, to that second video that was about weed management, or preparing a site for setting up a new crops and all. Earl said, chickens, pigs, goats have interesting effects on weeds and often are deployed to repurpose or to improve land use. And that's absolutely true. So for those of you who are relatively new to this video channel, we're also permaculturists, and permaculture really is a science-based approach using various principles and ethics, and it's a set of tools used to create more resilient resources that are in alignment with the ethics. And the ethics are basically earth care, people care, and some people will say fair share and all. And I've made videos about the permaculture principles and ethics and all that in the past years ago. And my ethics are derived from those partially. So my ethics are self-care, earth care, people care, and future care. And I made videos about those as well, and how each one of these overlap and affect future generations, like the Native Americans saw things, and many Asian cultures have looked to the future as well, trying to be stewards of the resources that are available to us. So with self-care, earth care, people care, and future care being my guiding principles, I always take whatever it is that I'm thinking about doing and go back to that. So when we built the house, we wanted an energy efficient house, passive solar home, super insulated, thermal mass, and we're in a cloudy location in the country, lots of snow and all. And at that time we couldn't afford solar panels, but we wanted to live a reasonable life and comfortable life inside a home that was designed for our climate. Then later on, when we had the resources, we put in solar panels on a separate system, on our rack systems, so that we could become more resilient, more energy independent. When we became whole food plant-based, and when I say whole food plant-based, what I mean is that many people are predominantly whole food plant-based, but we're entirely, so we aren't, you could call us vegan, but I don't like that term for us because many vegans don't eat healthy. And like I say, the first ethic is self-care, earth care. The first one is self-care. So I really want to take good care of ourselves. So that's super important to us. So, and I'm going to be a little bit all over the place with trying to describe these things. So having resilience, not just being sustainable, because things are constantly changing, things are evolving. To maintain a stable state in an environment where things are constantly changing, and that situations can come up. Employment may be curtailed, or your health may be compromised, or a loved one could develop dementia or heart failure or whatever it may be. Having resilience, and I talked about all the, my 10 forms of capital about that, and I won't go into all that in this video, but really we invest ourselves in our forms of capital that are based on our ethics and all. And although we are permaculturists here, we don't promote ourselves as being a permaculture site. And what Earl's talking about is using pigs and chickens and goats, are commonly used in regenerative agriculture. The things that Joel Salatin does, they're certainly used in permaculture. They're used in, it overlaps with keyline design in some practitioners of that as well. So there's almost a mesh network where there's some overlap of multiple different approaches to accomplish similar objectives. I guess that's the best way. So now that I've said that, I've tried recording this a couple of times and I keep flubbing up. So now that I've said all that and set the stage, I'm going to share with you my couple of perspectives. And so if you're a long-time listener, you know that we had chickens and ducks and all, and I love the chickens so much, and I do love ducks, but I mean, chickens are just so endearing, and they're fascinating to observe. And many people are aware that chickens are absolutely fantastic at getting pests in the gardens, getting pests in the various areas around the area. They can help to help break down materials and help with a composting process as well. Their waste products are beautiful forms of fertility for the soil, to help improve fertility as well. They do eat weed seedlings as well. They scratch and peck and disturb the surface of the soil. So chickens are pretty darn amazing. My neighbors have been pig farmers, were pig farmers for years. They've turned over to beef cattle right now. But and when we were kids, we had a neighbor who was a pig farmer, and we used to go up and take the old bread deliveries and feed it to the pigs as well. And I could see the rutting and the work that they do. But I've gone and observed, and of course, Thea and I are both veterinarians, so part of it, when you're becoming, even though we're both small animal practitioners, that means dogs and cats. We both worked with wildlife for many years before becoming veterinarians. We had horses before that as well. But during your veterinary training, during those 4 years, you're working with large animals, and that includes pigs and chicks and ducks and cattle and all. And so you get to really have an opportunity to be around them. And if you're an observer, observe and interact, one of the first principles in permaculture, you really get to study and see what the ramifications are when a pig is in an environment, in the various environments. And through the rutting process and all, they can create these puddle areas that are not helpful for ponds. All of these animals, if left loose in a garden, can be more destructive than helpful. But indeed, they can, a goat can go in and eat down so much crap that you don't want, weeds that you don't want in the area, and deposit their fecal remains. A pig can go in and rut up a lot of area as well, and the chickens can do their work as well, and you can cycle those different species through a lot, and I think it potentially can make a significant amount of improvement. And I like the science-based approach, so I would want to have someone follow the process, taking some native area, putting the goats through and run whatever cycles there are, and actually doing censuses, soil quality tests, and so on, and see how it actually works. But in general, I'm a believer that these animals can be cycled through areas in preparation and decrease the amount of man hours necessary to improve that lot. So that's one perspective that I have. The other perspective I have is from my science base, my medical training, and my belief in what is inevitable in the future. And I know what I'm going to say now, it'll probably lose more subscribers and all, and I understand that. To just be civil, say you're unsubscribing because I'm a believer in some of these things. I know when I posted the video about Thea and I getting the vaccinations for the recent virus that caused the pandemic, some people immediately unsubscribed, and that's cool. I'm fine with that, no hard feelings. And I suspect some people will unsubscribe again in response to this video. But I think it's inevitable if we follow history and we study epidemiology. I'm not an epidemiologist, but that was part of my training, and it's one of the things that I'm always researching. The other thing I'll say is, it's so distressing to me that so many people are turning their backs on science, and mainly because it's cognitive dissonance. It's like it's uncomfortable. People tell me this is fake. I can't trust these people. These are all they make millions of dollars and so on. And there are people who take advantage of the systems. There's people in government, people in pharmaceutical companies, there's manufacturers, there's nasty people in all walks of life, but they're a minority. And so I do believe in some of the information that's available. And so one of the places that I'm going to put a link in the description below is to the United States National Library of Medicine, NCBI. Is the acronym that's used for this. And it's a National Center for Biotechnology Information. And there's a really good article about what I'm just going to scratch the surface on right now. A really good article that gives a really layman's term description of some of the viruses that we need to be aware of for the next pandemic. The next pandemic, what we just went through, is a cakewalk, and we lost 500,000 people in the United States, and we're the wealthiest nation in the world. We have some of the best academic training for medicine in the world. Not the best, but some of the best. And it's just amazing that there's so much information that's a global effect, where we have leading scientists from all over the world sharing information, and with the genetic sequences of these different viruses and all, so that vaccines can be made at an astronomical pace nowadays. It's amazing. But one of the things that people aren't focusing on right now is the underlying triggering mechanisms. Like for instance, people will say, well, it was probably done in that lab there in Wuhan, or it was in the market and all. Yes, it does matter which of those two things it came from. I believe it came from the market, from just understanding zoology and when you can find different species in close proximity. So in this article that's going to be in the description below, it'll talk a little bit about H1N1 and H5N1 and all, and a couple of other of the variants as well. And these are just descriptive terms for how the affinity for the surface molecules on the proteins of these viruses, and where they have an affinity to attach. And there's some, so like for example, and the reason I'm bringing up this topic with Earl's comment is that we live in a different age where people are moving all the time, but for many years birds migrate. And so the possibility of rapid transmission or transfer of a virus from one person to another person is much more likely this day and age than ever before in history, because people move all over the world, business meetings and all. And that's slowed down since the pandemic, but it's going to kick back up again. But how these things start is they start with our domesticated animal species. The bird species have their own endemic pathogens that or viruses that live within them that doesn't necessarily kill them right off the bat. Now they mutate over time, just like bats have their own endemic virus particles that live within that species, and pigs have their own as well. And so pig, the nasal mucosa, the tissues, the surface receptors within their respiratory apparatus, in their nose and mouth, mainly in their nose area, have similar receptors for the ones that are in birds as well. And they also have similar receptors as the ones in people. And so these viruses can be transmitted from pigs to people, I don't want to say relatively easily, but yes, in comparison with other means of transmission, we have such similar surface receptors. The pigs aren't too far from us as far as anatomically and physiologically. But also with the pigs having similar receptors to those of birds, and pigs can have two co-infections. So they can have one of our viruses, and they can have the avian virus as well, the bird flu, and both be within the same cell. That enhances the possibility of a mutation. And these mutations, some of those mutations will ultimately, there's going to be one mutation that's not only going to be a highly pathogenic, meaning that it will kill you, a high death rate, but also a higher transmissibility between people to people. We've had so many cases where it's been caught really early on, and we haven't had that unique combination of easily transmitted and with a high kill rate, a high pathogenicity. So that is a big concern for the future. Now, do I want to make people all nervous and all? No. What we've decided to do is we aren't going to have pigs and chickens, and we're whole food plant-based, as I've mentioned in other videos, trying to eat a really healthy life. And so some of these when we see homesteads or farms that have a high concentration of pigs and chickens, and they also have like a food forest or places where the native birds migrate through, that raises a level of concern for me, even about socializing with those people, because we could have a highly transmittable virus being transmitted initially that could mutate and become more of a life-threatening virus as well. And I know I'm getting very long-winded with this whole possibility. I'm trying not to use too much terminology that will be confusing. So the two things that I worry about is basically a more severe effects on the person so that they can actually have a high death rate, and also the easyability of the transfer from person to person. In best cases, in most cases we've had is it's been transmitted from bird to bird, and we've had many birds killed. The poultry farms have been shut down. All of the birds have been incinerated or buried and all. But eventually, at some point in time, our agricultural system I see as being it's dynamite, and the blasting cap just isn't there yet, or the fuse is too long for it to get to it. I see it inevitable with the way that we practice animal agriculture that this is going to be a major issue. And it even concerns me more this day and age because so many people doubt that this stuff is even real. They think it's all I'm not sure what they think it is, but they just don't believe that this is all propaganda, it's all lies, and that it's really no big deal. So the one that we went through, I would say is probably relatively, and I'm not trying to demean it, a walk in the park compared to potentially what can come in the future. So again, self-care, earth care, people care, and future care. I think I've covered that as much as I wanted to cover it. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave a comment. No hard feelings if you feel like unsubscribing. I will put a link to the article that I didn't do justice for describing it. It is, I think, relatively simplistic to read through and get an understanding of, and from there go on and do some more research about these viruses that could be a concern for us in the future. I hope you folks take good care of yourselves, and I wish you well. Take care. Bye-bye.